Sim racing and motorsport. Over recent years, they have been converging, and it seems now, more than ever, that there are genuine on-track advantages to be gained by competing virtually. And we don't just mean driving on a simulator, but actually competing at the highest level online. That's why we travelled to the Donington Park circuit in the English Midlands recently to speak to talented racing driver Cooper Webster, who will be participating for Evans GP in the GB4 Championship this year, while simultaneously being an Oracle Red Bull Racing Esports driver. So, here's his story and why racing esports makes him a stronger competitor and how it could help you too. So, Cooper, pleasure to speak to you. There's a lot of discourse online about the sim racing world and how it may or may not help the real world racing and vice versa. So I thought there's no one better to speak to than yourself. And we're speaking today in the UK, Donington. So firstly, do you just want to explain why we're here and not in Australia?
We're here because I'm racing in real life in the GB4 category. Make the step from Australia to over here to run in this competitive series and see what can come from it. But yeah, this is one thing you can't do from my bedroom at home.
So if we just go way back, your career has some distinguished karting results. What got you into motorsport first of all, and did you ever play any like racing games that were at the same time as karting?
I got into motorsport because both sides of my family were, had something to do with motorsport, were racing or had businesses. So I was always surrounded by it as a young kid. And I started racing BMX first when I was about 4 years old.
Oh, right.
Until I was about 9. And then I was bugging Dad to get a go-kart. So I got a go-kart and started doing local races at Todd Road. And at that time, about 9, I had a PlayStation 2. I remember playing Need for Speed.
Yeah.
And there was a rally game that I always played, but I can't remember the name of it. But I was always into consoles and racing games as along the side of racing go-karts. And then I got a bit older and I got my first sim. I think it was probably about 11 or 12, just on a desk. And I just did that for fun with my mates. And then just recently it become more serious as it's now become professional in esports. Right. And I've always been on it. When I'm not racing in real life, I'm at home cutting laps on the sim, and I can't see why it wouldn't help either or.
Right. So just speaking of the real world briefly, you did well in the Hyundai Excel series, and then from there made the jump to S5000.
Yes.
Which is this, to the rest of the world outside of Australia, looks a bit mental. Because you've got a single-seater open wheels with the halo, but a 5.2 litre V8 in the back. That looks extremely wide Hoosier tyres at the rear, right?
Yep.
So what's that like to drive, first of all?
Well, the tyre doesn't have very much grip at all. So that's probably the most challenging thing because it makes braking, accelerating, cornering just, hard. Gives you a hard time. And the aero's not that much better. Just small wings, the floor's not very large. But it does make, watching the cars race around is very exciting because they move around so much and people always make mistakes. And then they thunder down the straight because the engines sound so good. I really, really love the category, and I think it's awesome. And, I think it's, everyone that jumps in them says they're a real beast to drive.
So you've had a couple of seasons in that championship, and last year in particular was really good. Third in the Australian Drivers' Championship and second in the Tasman Series.
Yes.
And then this year you did the first round in Tassie, which was a brace of podiums, I think.
Yes.
Are you planning on continuing that season as well?
Yes. The plan is each round that doesn't clash with GB4, back to Australia racing in the S5000 category, trying to do the best we can in that championship in Australia as well as here. I think that, the two sides of that is only a positive.
So another series that you're also doing this year, which you did last year, is the Porsche Esports Supercup.
Yes.
On iRacing.
Yes.
So you had a solid year last year, but then this year, as we're speaking, I think you're about 5th in the points, and you've had a podium position. So that's a good improvement, I think, year on year. What's been the main difference between last year and this year to get these stronger results?
I think the main difference is probably this year I did put in a lot more hours before the start of the season. I think I started practicing around Christmas time, and put in a lot of hours. That didn't bode well for the first round. We made a few mistakes there, whether it be setup or driving, just things we didn't get right, that really showed in qualifying in the race. But I think that paid off later in the next round and the next round, just to have that really solid race pace. And I think differently, just working harder mainly. I'm not as nervous going into races this year as I did last year because it's gone around for the second time. I think I still had a shaky brake leg into turn 1 in qualifying a few times, but it wasn't as bad this year.
Right.
But yeah, I think just little things that add up, and I think working with Seb for a second year on the time, we're kind of more familiar with each other and know what works and what doesn't work, because it's always a challenge practicing from Australia and he's in the UK. We can only do a couple hours each day, otherwise one of us is not sleeping. So that's another big part that we have to play with. But I think our duo is really good, and we've had really strong results this year.
Yeah, it's going well so far. And obviously you're racing for Red Bull Racing Esports.
Yes.
And you mentioned their teammate Sebastian Job, who's a previous world champion in this particular discipline. What's it like working with the team and with him as a teammate?
Really good. The environment's really good, and everyone works quite hard. That's all you want really in a sim team. There's just everyone that's really focused and driven and works really hard, and there's no one else better than that than Sebastian. He's one of the hardest working people I know, and he gets, it's either winning or it's win it or bin it for him, and
Right.
that's really good for most part of it. I wouldn't choose another teammate.
That's good to hear. And how did the deal with Red Bull come about, the esports team? And how did you transition from playing on the PlayStation 2 to more professional-focused esports?
I don't know how the path went. It was just sort of passion, and I just spent a lot of time on it. And sort of, the drive with Red Bull came from my performance in the qualifying series, trying to get into PES.
Right.
And there was a spot open. They were looking for a driver, and it was just good timing, really. If it was a year before, a year after, it might not be in this position. So I'm grateful for that, and it was just good timing. And I think, as I got simulators got more realistic, and esports grew in that COVID period, it was kind of just good timing. And the last couple of years I've really focused on getting world championship level of racing, and I think I just really enjoy it, and I think the passion with real life racing and sim racing is why I'm in this position.
Right. And then in terms of the relationship between the sim racing activities and the real world, obviously, a Porsche in iRacing is very different to GB4, which we'll touch upon soon, and S5000. But are there any skills other than learning the tracks, which is very handy for this year, anything else you get from sim racing? For example, does it help your racing IQ, when you're looking to overtake or defend? Does it help with calming nerves, being focused? Is it items like this that you can translate across? Yeah,
100%. There's some things that really translate perfectly between real life and sim racing, and I think what iRacing does really well. I think, learning the tracks, knowing where the distances between corners and right and left, that's really good. It's really hard to replicate the exact feeling you get in a sim to real life, and techniques with your braking and your throttle is not exactly the same, and it's still a long way from that. But like you said, the racing IQ is really important, and choosing when to defend, choosing when to push, and being under pressure. The pressure you feel in sim racing is the same or even more than what you have in real life. So putting yourself in that position a lot, going into qualifying, you've got to do one lap. It's the exact same as real life, and that's what I find really helps me.
Right, so it's this intense scenario that's similar adrenaline rush, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, exactly the same. I remember, I think the most nervous I've ever been for a race is a sim race, rather than not I've been more calm for a real life race than a sim race, and I still remember that exact race. Shaky legs and, making mistakes. So, putting that pressure on yourself in the sim, and you're doing the same movements, turning a wheel and braking and visuals and being aware of what's around you, it all really helps. And I think that's why I try to spend as much time on the sim when I'm not driving in real life to help real life.
Right, so it's extra practice, not just on the circuits, but it's the mental ability and the ability to focus.
I would say it's more the mental ability than the tracks. I find I don't do too many laps to try to focus on driving at tracks, because sometimes it gives you bad habits, because things that go fast on the sim don't make you fast in real life, but the things like the mental stress and the pressure and the IQ of really translates really well.
Right, well, let's hope you put that to good use this season. we'll just quickly touch upon your activities. You've had to move to the UK,
Yes.
is that correct? In
Yes.
Milton Keynes?
Yep.
It's a bit different to Australia. How
Very
are you finding
different.
that so far? I saw you eating a cheese sandwich earlier. That's one element.
Yeah, the cheese sandwich just popped up. I had that, but I've the same. The diet's still similar. Just meat, vegetables, and fruit.
Right. Yeah.
But first thing I noticed was it was a lot grayer here when I got here than Australia. Everything Australia is quite orange now that I think about it. And then apart
That might
from
be just Milton Keynes, but I don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah, I haven't seen much else of England yet, but there's it's different. It's challenging. I'm more stressed about that part of moving to the UK than the racing part. The racing I've been doing for more than 10 years.
Right.
Living by myself, I've never done. So that's more stressful, and I'm a bit worried that's gonna, I've got to get that down pat first to focus on the racing. But it's all fun, and it's good that I'm learning.
Nice. Well, that sounds like a fun challenge. I guess two final questions. Thanks to your partnership with the Red Bull Racing Esports team, I believe you have got access to things like their gym and their sim studio, right?
Yes.
So that's an advantage that perhaps over drivers who aren't in sim racing don't have and aren't with a sim racing team.
That's a good point.
It helps with the physical aspect in the real world, right? So are you looking forward to making use of that?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I went to the factory yesterday for the first time, and it blew me away. The facilities they got there and how they build the cars and the gym and the E-Arena. It's really amazing. So, when I'm not doing anything with GB4, working on the cars at the factory there, I'm at the gym or on the sim at the factory working hard.
And now you're in the same time zone as Sebi, right? So you can practice together for PESC at the same time.
It's like a dream come true, So I can message him at the same time when he's awake.
So final thing, GB4 this year, any hopes and expectations for the season ahead? And how is the testing going so far?
The testing is going really well so far. I hope to do well rather than worse. But I don't really, I don't want to put too many expectations. And it's just, all I can ask is to work hard and do the best I can. And, wherever that puts us is wherever it puts us. So obviously I want to win. But, I'll just work hard and wherever that I end up, that's how it goes.
Well, best of luck, Cooper Webster. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
There we go then. You heard it here from someone who's won in S5000 and has a full season of single-seater racing ahead of them. Competing virtually does have its significant advantages. Be sure to wish Cooper all the best with his busy year ahead in the comments below. You can watch his GB4 races on the MSTV YouTube channel throughout the year, and you can also follow the Oracle Red Bull Racing Esports team online. And while you're at it, please don't forget to subscribe to the TraxionGG YouTube channel for weekly sim racing content.